It's Monday, October 23. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. The Supreme Ventures Limited board members have lawyered up as they respond to a reported hostile board takeover by Trinidadian shareholder Zodiac and investment house Mayberry. Reports are that Mayberry had requested an extraordinary general meeting to remove and replace 7 members of the current 10-member SVL board, but that date is still to be set. In an interview with The Gleaner, SVL chairman and founding shareholder Paul Hu said, quote, "We are waiting our lawyers to give us an opinion," end quote. Hu is one of those targeted for eviction from the board. The others include Peter Chin, Richard Foreman, John Graham, Stephen Hudson, Ian Moore, and James Morrison. Mayberry wants to replace them with Christopher Berry, Gary Peart, Nicholas Moutet, David McConnell, Peter McConnell, Ansel Howell, and Lance Hilton. According to the SVL, Zodiac owns 38.3% of the lottery company. The connected parties that requested the EGM, Mayberry West Indies, Bamboo Holdings Limited, and Conrad Mark Berry, are said to own around 10% of SVL among them. Hu himself holds 5.7% stake. Mayberry has scheduled a press conference for today to explain their motivation. The government will be implementing the automated system for customs data, which will replace the requirement for export certificates. The Processed Food Bill and the Processed Food General Regulations were passed without amendments in the Senate on Friday to, among other things, make way for the new system's implementation. Senator Don Webby, who is also chairman of JAMPRO and CEO of Grace Kennedy, said with the passage of the legislation, there can be greater focus on easing bureaucracy in trade.
It is expected that this will remove and will speed up the export process for processed food, facilitate trade, and bring Jamaica closer in line with international best practices regarding production and export.
Pest control programs, transportation of food items, time and temperature control, microbiological and chemical requirements, as well as hazard analysis, will also be monitored under the legislation. National Security Minister Robert Montague is concerned about the issue of legal firearms making their way to the criminal underground. Minister of National Security Robert Montague addressed the issue at a recent press briefing. He explained that the dishonest accumulation of rounds is contributing to the country's crime problem.
Those rounds would get into the hands of the criminal underworld and may be contributing to the over 1,000 Jamaicans who have passed. There's another leakage, another possible leakage, where persons would maybe go onto a range. They go onto the range, but they empty their magazines. And they go onto the range with empty magazines. Then they purchase rounds and they fill their magazines and walk away. It's difficult even for the range owner to monitor when a person is doing that. Again, there is leakage.
The minister says there is a gap between the legitimate rounds sold to licensed firearm holders and the number of rounds imported.
If we add up all the legitimate rounds that ought to be out there and look at the amount of rounds being imported into the country, there is that gap of 7 to 8 million where we are not sure whether those rounds were used on ranges or whether those rounds are locked in somebody's safe or whether those rounds are in the hands of members of the criminal underground.
Another issue of concern is the absence of a literacy test for persons who apply for a license to carry and use guns. Minister Montague says it was reportedly discontinued before his tenure because persons from abroad who reside in Jamaica had a problem with the test being in English.
We happen to be in Jamaica. English happens to be our official and standard language. And going forward, if you are going to apply for a firearm license, we need to know that you are literate, and we also need to know that you understand the safe handling of a firearm and you understand the law.
Bank of Jamaica, BOJ Governor Brian Winter is refuting claims by some economists that the central bank has adopted a depreciation policy. This, they say, policy placed Jamaica in a worse-off economic state by allowing the local currency to reach its fair value. Not so, says Mr. Winter. He says, quote, "The central bank does not have a depreciation policy. The government's policy, which is the policy we operate, is for there to be a flexible market-determined exchange rate, which means that the price of the US dollar will be changed based on supply and demand conditions, like any other good." End quote. In July, BOJ introduced the Foreign Exchange Intervention Tool as a new system to facilitate the buying and selling of foreign exchange. The governor was speaking at the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce breakfast conversation on Wednesday at Knutsford Court Hotel in Kingston. In regional news, in Dominica, Chief Physical Planner Kelvin Roll says preliminary observations by his team across the island shows most roofing failures during the recent hurricane was due to poor construction. At least 80% of the island's buildings were damaged during the passage of Hurricane Irma in September.
So the failures may be due, like we say, to poor construction practices. Galvanized sheetings were attached to purlines with nails instead of using screws. Purlines were attached to rafters with nails instead of being screwed down. Hurricane clips or ties were not used to secure purlines to rafters. So each purline should have a hurricane clip or tie. We think that a lot of training needs to be given to our building contractors. Certification, we have to have the certification process going.
Since the passage of Irma, schools have been reopened and reconstruction of businesses and homes has begun. However, officials and aid workers says it could take months, if not years, to rebuild what has been destroyed. And weeks after being ravaged by Hurricane Irma and Jose, St. Martin is working to get back on its feet. And one major focus is the re-establishment of its tourism industry. The opening of the new St. Martin Rockland Estate Eco Park is seen as a positive step. The Rainforest Adventures has announced a November 2017 opening of the Eco Park. The park will launch with 2 signature attractions. Since the passage of the hurricanes in September, the Princess Juliana International Airport has opened to commercial flights, and Port St. Martin is ready to welcome its first commercial cruise vessel on November 5. Restaurant and attraction businesses are also reopening daily and are ready to receive guests. In other regional news, medical history was created in the Caribbean, Central and South America when a doctor in the Cayman Islands implanted a cardiac contractility modulation device, CCM, to treat heart failure in a Cayman Islands resident. Dr. Ravi Kishore, chief interventional cardiologist, implanted the device. The CCM device implantation is currently conducted only on an investigational basis in the United States. It is approved and available for clinical use in all European countries and in Australia, Turkey, India, and Hong Kong. While CCM therapy is not approved for clinical use in the United States, a study has been initiated in order to obtain FDA approval. This is specifically used in patients with congestive heart failure, where the heart pumping function has come down in spite of medications. And those were the local and regional stories. Do stay with us. Sports is next. In sports, we kick off with football, as Jamaica's under-17 Reggae Girls crashed out of the CONCACAF CFU Championship playoff game when they lost 6-7 on penalties to Puerto Rico at the Stade Silvio Qatar Stadium in the Haitian capital yesterday. The match was locked at 1-1 after full time, but before going to penalties. The young girls entered the tournament as defending champions, but found the going difficult from their first game, going down 2-3 to Bermuda. Jamaica bounced back to beat Trinidad and Tobago 3-1 to make the playoff where their dreams crashed. In the championship final, hosts Haiti were leading Bermuda 1-0 at press time. Haiti, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico have qualified for CONCACAF finals. In cricket, West Indies women completed a 3-0 series whitewash over Sri Lanka in the final one-day international at the Brian Lara Cricket Academy yesterday. The series was part of ICC Women's Championships for qualifications to World Cup 2021. West Indies women won by 40 runs after rain restricted the 50 overs to 45 per innings. Stephanie Taylor was the best bowler for the West Indies women, taking 3 for 29. She was named player of the match and the series. The tour moves on to Coolidge Cricket Ground in Antigua for the 2020 matches next week. On to athletics, as retired sprint king Usain Bolt is determined to pursue his dream of playing professional football, but admits he will not, quote, embarrass, end quote, himself if his goal is out of reach. Bolt, the 100 meters and 200 meters world record holder and 8-time Olympic champion, insists he is serious about his football dream, despite skepticism that at 31, his advanced age will count against him. Bolt told reporters on the sidelines of the Formula One Grand Prix in Austin on Sunday, quote, "It's a personal goal. I don't care what people really think about it. I'm not going to lie to myself. If I feel I can't do it, I'm going to say, forget this. I am not going to embarrass myself," end quote. Bolt has had a long-standing invitation to train with Dortmund, an arrangement facilitated by his longtime sponsors, Puma. That's news and sports. Do stay with us. The Weather Report is next. This is PBCJ's Weather Report. Thanks so much for staying with us. Let's start with our local currents. Today we can expect an average temperature between 30 and 33 degrees Celsius across the island. We're also seeing a forecast of possible showers in the eastern end of the island, and it should be partly cloudy across several parishes. In our forecast for tonight, we're seeing a possibility of partly cloudy conditions. We're also seeing a forecast of scattered showers across several parishes, mainly in the southern and western end of the island. The average temperature tonight should be between 24 and 26 degrees Celsius. Let's take a look at our forecast for tomorrow. We are seeing a forecast of scattered showers across most parishes tomorrow, and we're also expecting an average temperature between 29 and 32 degrees Celsius. Please ensure that you dress and prepare accordingly. In our regional forecast for tomorrow, we're expecting scattered showers across several countries in the Caribbean. We're seeing a forecast of showers over there in Cuba and Mexico, over there in Antigua and Grenada as well. We're seeing an average temperature forecast between 29 and 30 degrees Celsius. Let's take a look at our travel forecast. And that's it for the Weather Report. Thanks so much for making it PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station.
Every time there's a strong breeze, we are full up a leaf.